of course, you can't do any of this if you can't detach. You'll never figure out anything that I'm talking about if you are in the gray slop. You won't ever see it. Most importantly, all leaders have a responsibility to build a database of professional knowledge that will assist them in creating insight during stressful situations. They do this by studying doctrine, seeking instruction from mentors, being self-critical about performance, recording new ideas, participating in thought exercises, discussing related concepts with peers, and reading professional works. You got to know history. You got to have tactical options. You got to have your personal experience. And if you have those things, you will be able to find creative answers on the battlefield, because sometimes the answer is not in doctrine. The concept of brain-based combat leadership deserves attention in both military and professional development courses and unit-level education training programs. Teaching leaders what they will physiologically experience will better prepare them to maintain emotional stability and effectively lead others during combat. And it's got a bunch of recommendations for the Army in here. And then here's the conclusion. Combat involves a wide range of events, dangers, and sensory inputs that can easily overwhelm the unprepared mind. The first job of every soldier, regardless of rank, is to maintain his composure and react reflexively to the threat as required. Leaders, however, must go beyond the conditioned response to combat that we train on the live fire range. They must zoom out, right? Detach, and adopt a macro level view of the battle, quickly analyze events occurring, decide on the appropriate response, coordinate complex systems, and apply the appropriate leadership skills to accomplish the mission. These brain functions are among the most sophisticated processes that we humans can perform. Leaders who do not protect their own cognitive function during combat will find themselves short of the biological resources necessary to win, meaning glucose to your brain, and place themselves and others at risk. In this sense, knowing how to think could be a combat leader's most valuable tool. So what that whole article was about was trying to get leaders, trying to teach leaders to detach from the monkey brain and use your brain to think. And not be driven by your instincts, but driven by logic and reason. Now, here's where I'm going to give some additional information that is slightly contrary. It's not contrary, but you have to think about it. This is something I've always said. Detachment doesn't mean that you become void of emotions. In fact, emotions have to be part of the calculus. Your emotions, your team's emotions, your boss's emotions, all emotions need to be taken into account. Now, this does not mean that they drive our decision-making process, but they have to play a role. They have to be in the calculus. We have to be the driver, right? Here's my metaphor. We heard about a chariot. We heard about this. We have to have the steering wheel. We have to have the brakes. We have to have the gas. We have to know when is it the good time to add more emotion, because sometimes we need to add more emotion to the situation. Right? You ever had a situation where someone's not getting it, like cornering someone in MMA, and they're losing 2 rounds, and they have 1 more round left, and they go, "I think the fight's going okay." No, that's not. No, you might need to press the gas on the emotion. You also might need to take some of that emotion away. In yourself, you might need to know when it's time to turn on the emotion, when it's time to pull some back. You might need to know what you need to control, when it's time to follow your instinct, and when it's time to say, hold on, I need to pay attention to the logic here. That should be our goal. Our goal should be to have the steering wheel, have the brakes, have the gas, know when we need to push, know when we need to pull back. And learn how to drive and manage and modulate your emotions and your ego and your reason and your logic, and utilize all those different inputs to create decisions and solutions and create actions. And of course, you can't do any of this if you can't detach. You'll never figure out anything that I'm talking about if you are in the gray slop. You won't ever see it. You won't even know what I'm talking about right now. But you can't abandon emotions and ego and passion. You need to stay in touch with them. You need to stay connected to them, but you can't be controlled by them. And this is very, very difficult. And it's also very, very important. So T.E. Lawrence, Lawrence of Arabia, a famous British guy, archaeologist. He's a military officer. He became famous during the Arab Revolt in 1916 and 1918 against the Ottoman Empire. And he had a quote in his book, The 7 Pillars of Wisdom. 9/10 of tactics are certain and taught in books, but the irrational 10th is like the kingfisher flashing across a pool. And that is the test of generals. And I saw a guy on Twitter X named Infantry Dort, who puts out a lot of good information. He had this quote up. But the point of this quote is, this is something that is very, very difficult to teach. That you can learn 9/10 of being a combat leader. You can learn from the books. You can learn from the schoolhouse. You can learn it on the drill field. Like there's all 9/10 of it. You can have it all dialed in, but there's a 10th of it. He calls it the irrational 10th, which is like you can't teach it to somebody. Now, T. Lawrence does say you can get better at it, but it's very, very difficult to teach. But it's not only applicable to the military, it's applicable. Like you hear about it in sports, right? In sports, I think, and you can correct me on this, you're more of a sports guy than I am. You hear people describing athletes that have certain intangibles, right? They got this capability, they got this much talent, but they have intangibles. Michael Jordan, was he the tallest guy? No. But what did he have? He had something that we all have a hard time naming. And people will try and name it court sense. Like, even court sense, what's that? Yeah. Is that a thing? Like, are we going to name that? Like, is that can I teach you court sense?
Right.
Maybe I can give you some, you get familiar with the game, but there's some people that have another level of it. Tom Brady, the famous videos of Tom Brady at the combine. Looking weak, slow. But what did he have? He had some intangibles. Muhammad Ali, Lionel Messi, Deion Sanders. These people had some. And MMA, we see it, right? Johnny Bones Jones. What is he doing? Like, he's doing, like, okay, we all know Muay Thai. We all know wrestling. We all know jiu-jitsu. We all know boxing. But all of a sudden, he's doing something else, right? He's taking all those things and mixing it in a way that we go, wait, no one taught him that. And Coach Jackson would say, like, oh, no, he never saw him do that before. Yeah. He just did it there in the moment. Fedor Emelianenko. What is he putting together? How's he winning fights? Right? Hickson Gracie, Marcelo Garcia into the jiu-jitsu world. Like, what? There's something going on there. They have these intangibles. They have these irrational tenths that it doesn't matter. You can't get them from the gym. And then in Hollywood, you get the same thing, right? In Hollywood, what do they call it? They call it it. They call it the it factor, or just it. Marilyn Monroe, Marlon Brando, Denzel Washington, right? Al Pacino, Chris Pratt. Chris Pratt? Bro, you hang out with Chris Pratt and you go, oh.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay. There's a reason that he's Chris Pratt. There's something about him. He's got something. They call it it. They call it the thing, but you don't really know what it is. Like when I was first going to meet Chris Pratt, I was going to a UFC fight with Jack Carr, and we were flying from LA. It was super cool, but it was my first time meeting like a real famous like Hollywood person. I was kind of like, I bet this guy's going to be like, how they portrayed Matt Damon in Team America World Police.
Oh, I know.
They kind of portrayed Matt Damon like kind of just dumb or whatever. And so I kind of thought, I don't know nothing about Hollywood. I'm like, okay, that must be the real assessment of these Hollywood people. So, but I seen Chris Pratt and stuff, but I thought, whatever, like he's going to be kind of like that caricature that they put forward in Team America World Police. And then you meet him and you spend like 5 minutes around him and you go, oh, okay. Okay, I get it. There's a reason that he's who he is. But no one can, he didn't learn that in acting school. I don't even think he went to acting school. Right? He didn't I don't think he was in the school plays and had the drama teacher like saying, no, you need to give a little bit more furrow in your brow or be a little bit quicker on your comeback. Like, I don't know, none of that. But there's something there. And then you get like rock musicians, right? Ozzy, of course. Elvis, Hendrix, Prince. Like, you know, these are people that they just have some thing. And by the way, not just singers, but people that can play an instrument. If you go down to Guitar Center and you put up, hey, I'm hiring a guitarist. I need a guitarist that can play Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Tool, which is hard as hell, and Rush, which is hard as hell, proficiently. Call this number. In San Diego, I'll get 10 phone calls. And they'll be able to do it too. And one of the guys is like a waiter. One of the guys will be a construction worker. One of the guys will be a whatever. Because they're really good at their instrument, but they don't have that little thing that Kurt Cobain had, which is take 4 chords and turn it into like a whole album. So there is this unquantifiable kind of 10th or intangible, irrational 10th. And here's what I think is, especially from a leadership perspective, that thing is the connection back to the gray slop. The connection back to the gray slop, which is the ability to connect with someone emotionally, connect to that animal instinct, communicate with that. Like even what you're just talking about, like you see someone talking and they're getting people fired up. They're not talking to their logical. You never heard someone say, I want to go over the statistics right now. Like they don't, right. That's not a fired up speech. The fired up speech doesn't appeal to that. What it does when someone has this ability, when they have that connection back to their emotional gray slop and they can modulate it properly, they can utilize it to write a great song, to lead people, to improvise a martial arts move. Like when they get done, Conor McGregor gets a hold of the microphone and everyone goes nuts because he's going to connect in a way that someone else that doesn't have that ability to have problems or to not get where they want to go. And by the way, sometimes some people can tap into it and they but it's too much, right? And in the entertainment business, you end up with Kurt Cobain, you end up with Jim Morrison, you end up with Janis Joplin, you end up with Amy Winehouse, you end up with Sid Vicious, you ended up with Jim Belushi, you end up with Heath Ledger. Like these people are people that would tap back in, but then it would kind of like just get hold of them. So it's one of these things, you got to control it. You got to tap into it, but if you don't have control over it, and by the way, this happens with leaders too, like leaders that lose their minds, which when you have a leader that's in charge of an organization and they lose their minds, they used that tapping into their emotions and their ego to drive things and make things happen. But at a certain point, it takes over and they lose their minds. Their prefrontal cortex just shuts down and now their ego's running the show and it's a disaster.com. So that's why you gotta know how to when to hit the brakes. You got to know when to hit gas. You got to steer it in the right direction. And if you have the rationalization and you have the discipline to do that, you have the discipline to go, so hold on a second. This is about to be an egotistical decision. And by the way, when I stood up in front of the company, I said, we're going to go into this market. Nothing's going to stop us. And that was tapping into my ego and tapping into my emotion and connecting with other people's emotion because they all want to win and I want to win because that's going to do better for our survival in the world and I'm going to tap into that. But then 2 months later, when it's like, hey, we got a decision to make on if we're going to continue to expend this money on this marketing campaign that hasn't done well, my ego might be saying, well, I know it's going to work, but it's not a good move. And you got to be able to decipher and utilize the proper area of your brain. And you have to be the person that's controlling it. You can't let your emotions make decisions, but you can't leave them out of the decisions. And sometimes you got to press the gas on your emotions. And sometimes you got to press the gas on your ego. You ever seen an MMA fighter, as they're getting closer and closer to the fight, their ego starts growing. If it grows too early, they stop training. If it grows too late, they're not ready for the fight. They doubt themselves. They have got to figure out how to modulate these things. We have to figure out how we modulate these things. When someone can do that, that's a rare person. And that's going to be the person that rises to the top.